So this was a video I was not expecting to make, but basically there's some good changes happening to Genshin's monetization system. And by changes to monetization system, I mean, yes, that means like the ways you can spend money in Genshin. So if you are a free-to-play player, much of the things I am talking about will not affect you. But there is, oh, there's a pretty sunset. Nope, nope, don't get distracted. What I want to talk about these things anyways, because I think they have ramifications for even the gaming industry as a whole, but more specifically to gacha game practices. So in case you didn't hear, there was a FTC settlement that Hoyoverse made regarding Genshin Impact. So this is the FTC post for their press release. I will link these in the description. There is, like, the surface level you might have heard about this is something that doesn't seem that significant, but there's some details therein. When I was reading the actual, like the filings, I think there's actually good changes happening as a result of this. It's such that I wanted to make a video. I was originally not going to make a video until I noticed some of these details. The real quick summary, though, is basically what this says, where Genshin Impact game developer Hoyoverse will be banned from selling, technically Cognosphere, that's the publishing company, whatever. They're going to be banned from selling loot boxes, so that's the gacha mechanic. In case if you're familiar with Genshin or not familiar with Genshin, it's just the gambling mechanic, right? Where you spend virtual currency to get a randomized set of things in game. In mini games, this could be only cosmetic things. In Genshin Impact, this is of course acquirable items that affect your gameplay experience. You know, they'll be banned from selling loot boxes to teens under 16 without parental consent and pay a $20 million fine. That means kind of whatever to a lot of people at a baseline, but there's some details here. The banning selling loot boxes to teens is basically just that there's going to be an age verification thing in the US. That's kind of whatever, because it's not like they're going to ask for ID or anything. It's just going to be, oh, enter your birthday, whoop-de-doo. I would hope that parents are already like using parental controls through Apple or Google to make sure their children are not spending like $1,000 in the game. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. Instead, what I wanted to talk about is how part of their complaint, which by the way, this complaint document is part of what I was reading through, is 37 pages long. I did not read every single word in depth, but has a lot of allegations in how Hoyoverse markets things and how that is problematic and misleading. And I agree with a lot of the things they're saying. There is some things in here that I think is just blatantly wrong, but we don't need to get too focused on that, because I think the end result is that Hoyoverse did release a statement where, you know, hey, there's a settlement, and they have agreed. Under the agreement, we will introduce new age gate and parental consent protections for children and young teens and increase our in-game disclosures around virtual currency. I can't speak. Currency and rewards for players in the US in the coming months. Some of their allegations are a bit silly, like implying that Genshin is basically only a children's game. And I do think Hoyoverse is correct here. It is targeted not towards just children. My own demographics on YouTube support that. I have primarily an audience, like 95% of my audience is over 18. But the important thing here is that the settlement was agreed to, and under the proposed order, there's this whole list of things. And even here, this summary from FTC's press release doesn't have that much information in it. But this notable thing here is that they would be prohibited from misrepresenting loot box odds, prices, and features, and required to disclose the odds and exchange rates for multi-tiered virtual currency. But thankfully, they link us the actual filing for what the order is. This is a long document, by the way. And this, I spent reading most of it, actually, most of the non-appendix section. It's not actually that dense, but, you know, I'm going to try to explain the important takeaway here. This is all just, like, good things, in my opinion. Like, I don't think it's a bad that they're requiring an age consent. It's, like, I don't think it's going to necessarily solve the problem at hand as far as, like, children spending a bunch of money in Genshin. This is good, but this is the big thing that actually potentially changes the monetization structure in Genshin. Also, I actually wish to mention one other thing quick. There's a quote from the Samuel Levine, the director of FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection. Companies that deploy these dark pattern tactics will be held accountable if they deceive players, particularly kids and teens, about the true cost of in-game transactions. Genshin Impact is nowhere near the only game that does, like, misleading structures to try to influence people to spend money, right? Like, I really hope that they're going to stay true to what they're saying here, because there's a lot of games, including games from a bunch of US companies, that probably need to be held accountable, like they're saying they will be held accountable. I hope this sets a precedent for, like, larger things in the game industry to have less predatory structures. Because in my opinion, there's some games that do things worse than Genshin as far as like some of the specific things they're claiming about Hoyoverse. And by the way, it's worth mentioning, like in this order, this is a settlement, not like a judgment. So no one has admitted directly that, oh, the Hoyoverse has done wrong. A settlement is just Hoyoverse is like, okay, sure, we'll agree to this because they don't want to have it go to court and whatever. Does not technically mean they are guilty of the things being accused. So that's why I want to focus on what the actual order has inside of it. And it's notable, it does have to be approved to a federal judge before it can go into effect. Now, there's a whole bunch of definitions here which are very important for understanding like the verbiage of what the actual order is. We don't need to read through all of that. We're going to skip straight to what the actual order is. So, the order, there's like 7 different parts of this, by the way. Number 1 is ban on sales to children and early teens without affirmative consent from parents. There's some specifics in here and how they have to do that, yada yada. But number 2 is what I want to focus on. There's other important ones in here, like they're prohibited against misrepresentation, so that has to do with like how they are displaying the cost of things and how they obfuscate, like how many wishes do you get if you spend $100 on a top up that gives you 6,480 Genesis crystals, right? How many wishes is that actually? A lot of the complaint filed against Hoyoverse was how misleading it was to have all these different currencies and not knowing the actual value of what you're getting for your money, and that's part of what was covered in here in misrepresentations. So number 2 though, ban against sales of chances to obtain digital content or merchandise via a covered mechanism without an option to purchase using fiat currency directly. So fiat currency is like, you know, globally recognized like national currency. So like the US dollar is a fiat currency. We need to define what is a covered mechanism real quick, so we can scroll up. It is any gameplay mechanic or element in a covered product or service, such as Genshin Impact Wish system, loot boxes, or other systems by which a player of a game may use US dollars, other fiat currency, or cryptocurrency to purchase or attempt to purchase digital content or merchandise, or virtual currency needed to purchase digital content or merchandise, where the items or digital content or merchandise will be provided are determined by chance. It's a gameplay mechanic in which money is spent and then the stuff you receive is determined by chance. And it requires numerous purchases or attempts to purchase to guarantee receipt of a specific item or both. So that is like, if you want to guarantee getting Mawika or Sitlali currently on banner, you'd have to spend, say, 3 top-ups. A covered mechanism is legal speak for like how they are hiding the way you actually acquire things in the loot box systems and gacha systems behind, you know, obfuscated in-game currencies, right? This is like the legal term for what Genesis crystals are, essentially, and Primo Gems and Fates, right? So we should go back to section 2 here. Oh, I should probably have mentioned this earlier. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think this document requires a lawyer to parse the definition of how they're like defining things. It's possible I could interpret this wrong. It's possible the judge doesn't pass this and whatever, this might not come to pass. I hope it is coming to pass though, particularly because it's already been, you know, settled and announced and whatever, but we'll see. All right, so this is basically they're banned from doing gacha. This is basically what they're saying, unless there's an option to purchase directly using something, a real currency like US dollars, right? So this is a long-winded way to get to the point of they have to have a structure where instead of having to wish on the banner, you can just go into the shop and there is a price tag like there is for Genesis crystals for buying Sitlali or Mawika. And notably, this should include 4 stars as well, because anything that's purchasable should have to be there, I believe, is what this means. But let's read the full thing. It is further ordered that no later than 6 months after the effective date, defendants, officers, agents, employees, blah, 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 or selling of any digital content or merchandise by a covered mechanism are permanently restrained and enjoined from failing to provide consumers a means to directly purchase with a fiat currency a chance to obtain digital content or merchandise via a covered mechanism, without requiring consumers to purchase or exchange virtual currency. To purchase directly must be provided at the same time a covered mechanism is offered. Covered mechanisms being, you know, like the Genesis crystals, and must clearly indicate the cost to purchase using fiat currency. This verbiage right here is pretty clear to me. So the non-legal speak is that there is the normal gacha system, so presumably MiHoYo could just remove Genesis crystals entirely, I guess, if they wanted for the US, but presumably they'll just leave this all the same, but then in conjunction there's going to have to be like a new menu option in the shop here, for example, that we can just have a dollar price tag for the gotcha acquirable things. That's what it means. Like, they're going to have a price tag for Sitlali, and they're going to have a price tag for 4 stars. And that's actually what I wanted this video to be about. Because for 5 stars, I don't think it actually matters that much. Because it basically just means they have to be honest about the price of things. I've made wishing videos where, you know, my whole focus is that I'm trying to do exactly that, where I'm trying to focus the video on, like, what does $300 get you on Sitlali's banner? The reason I make that structure for videos is because that's functionally what the cost is, based on the worst case of going to pity twice and starting from nothing. You can consider one copy of this character to cost $300 in the worst case. Sometimes you might get lucky because it is a gacha system, but if you want to, like, get a Sitlali constellation when you have no Primo Gems left and you're going to spend money for it, you should consider the cost $300. So I would suspect that MiHoYo is going to price the direct cost of a Sitlali in the shop, and I presume there was nothing in there, by the way, about, like, having to make Sitlali and Mawika purchasable after the banner duration is done. So presumably they're only going to be in the shop during the banner duration. But basically, I assume they're going to be in here and they're going to be $300. They're going to have a $300 price tag, Sitlali in this. And that's kind of whatever, because if it's $300, the chance of getting early 5 stars means like the average you take to get a 5 star is 1 in 62 wishes, which means the overall average, if you're doing a lot of wishes over time, is 124 wishes is basically the functional actual average cost to get 1 copy of Sitlali. It's not what you should plan around, to be clear, if you were going to do top-ups, but that basically means $250 approximately is what the cost of a 5 star is. So I would be surprised if they price 5 stars anywhere less than $250. But it's a way to not engage with the gacha system and just buy the character. It's possible they end up pricing 5-star characters less than that, but I'm assuming they're not going to, because if they price 5-star characters, say, at $150, then that would mean they potentially are making less money from people buying the characters directly in the shop compared to people engaging with the gacha system. So of course they're just going to price them in a way that, you know, is right at the amount of what the worst case scenario is. Theoretically, they could price it up to like $360 to be equivalent to going to 90 pity twice, even though that's like unfathomably unlikely to have that happen. But anyways, I want to talk about 4 stars because I've made and yapped in so many videos, and especially my wishing videos, about how the worst aspect to me for playing Genshin long term is trying to acquire 4 stars. I don't even have a 4 star on this team. That's rare. Usually I play with 4 stars. But basically the reason 4 stars suck to acquire is because oftentimes they have desirable constellations. So let's take Kachina. Kachina's a relatively newer 4 star on this current banner. If you wanted to get C6 of her, and I'm not talking the specific relevance of actually, like, I'm not saying it's worth it to go for C6 Kachina. I'm just saying, let's use her as an example, right? If you wanted to get a copy of Kachina, the average you can expect is 1 in 34 wishes is going to be a Kachina. But there is 0 guarantee system, unlike for 5 stars, right? Where Sitlali, the worst case scenario you can expect, the literal worst case possible, is 180 wishes on this banner. The actual worst case scenario is more like, you know, 150 wishes to account for the soft pity system. And then the on average across large numbers of wishes is more like 1 in every, you know, 124 wishes. So $240 equivalent with $2 per wish. With 4 stars, this means 1 in 34 wishes, the average price is, you know, 34 times 2, so that's $68. So $70 US. That's expensive, right? The problem is that because there's no guarantee system for a specific 4 star. What happens if you lose the 50-50 for when you get a 4 star, your next 4 star is guaranteed to be one of the 3, but not a specific one, right? There is no system to guarantee. If we go look at my wish history, you can see I got a Bennett, and before that, what did I get? I got a Favonius Codex. So I got a weapon that is not a featured 4 star, and then the next one is guaranteed to be one of the featured 4 stars, but not a particular one. It was just randomly selected from one of those 3. It's complete RNG. There is no known quantities you can know. It is possible to spend infinite amounts of money and get 0 Kachinas. Statistically, that's not going to happen because law of large numbers will take effect, and the average you can expect if you wanted to get a C6 Kachina starting from nothing is approximately 210 wishes. So that's $420, which is, again, that average is, you know, approximately 1 in 30 polls you would expect to get a Kachina. The big problem, though, is like 4 star constellations are oftentimes irrelevant enough that, or you just like the character, you might be tempted to go for a copy of a single copy, to get a C0 copy just because you like the character, or to go for a specific constellation because you're like 1 or 2 copies away to a relevant ability. Like, it's worth mentioning that, Chevreuse is rerunning in a few days here, and Chevreuse C6 is going to be a very tempting constellation that people will consider wishing extra for, even if they already have the 5-star character on the banner. It could be argued that it is worth taking that risk, right? But this FTC order would mean that they should have to have a pricing in the shop for 4 stars, right? So instead of having to engage with the gacha, you can just buy a copy of Chevreuse. And that's, I think, a pretty important deal as far as the monetization structure of the game goes. So that means you don't have to waste your pity. So if you don't want a copy of Arlecchino or Clorinde, but you wanted to get a couple copies of Chevreuse, you should be able to just go spend money for it and not risk your pity you're built up that you have saved for a future character, because you can save the amount of wishes that you have towards the next 5-star character. That's exactly where it could be valuable. Either you're tempted to get that one more for that constellation, or you just got unlucky and you got the 5-star character early and didn't get the 4-star and don't want it because you want to save your Primogems for a future 5-star character, because that's like what you should make your plans around, is the 5-star characters, because they're the harder ones to acquire. They take more wishes on average to get, but like, you still wanted that 4-star. There's going to be an option in the future, within 6 months, hopefully. There should be an option in the shop to buy the 4 stars. Like, I think you understand that from the moment I mentioned it, but I wanted to emphasize how like significant of a change I feel that is. It doesn't solve the problem, to be clear, like, because it doesn't benefit free-to-play players. I do wish they would add some kind of system like this system, but for 4 stars on limited character banners would be good for free-to-play players. This is only technically benefiting players that are going to pay money, but it's still better than nothing. Like, the option to buy them. The question is, what do they price the 4 stars at, right? Because with the average of it taking, potentially 34 wishes on average to get a Kachina copy or whatever, you could say they should price it at $70. But like, I feel like Mihoyo wouldn't price it at $70, right? 4-star characters for $70 would be, I think, a bad look for them. What's a better anti-advertisement for a gacha game than if you can go into a shop screen and you like take a screenshot of like a 5-star character that has a price tag of $360 and a 4-star character that has a price tag of $70. So my ideal is, I think like if they price them at $20 or $30, right? So just $20 to ignore the gacha system to buy a 4-star, so that if I wanted to get, whatever 4-star character and not wish for the 5-star, I can do that. Like, not that I'd want to do that always, because like, just directly spending, $200 for a C6 4-star doesn't seem like the wisest spending of money. But in the conjunction of like, okay, you're doing a few wishes anyways, and like, you say you get to C4 Chevreuse or C4 Lanyon, and you don't want to risk any more pity because you already got the 5-star, but you really want the 4-star, the C6 4-star, well, now you can like just spend $40. You can make an informed decision, because it's just a pricing structure available in the game, to spend $40 and get that C6 character directly, right? Without having to risk losing any other resources that you have like saved and built up over time. I think this could be an incredibly positive change for the game to the players that are willing to spend money. And I think that if Mihoyo prices it that way, it would even make them money, potentially, right? Because like, if they price it at $70, nobody's going to buy a 4-star character basically for $70. That's god-awful. But if they price it at $20, there's definitely circumstances where I think I would actually seriously consider, paying for some 4-star constellations. I really do think it'd be a nice option to have. It's only a positive improvement. And I think this has positive ramifications for other gacha games potentially following suit, because of, them not wanting to not be sued by the United States government and having to pay $20 million. But also it has potential ramifications with the other things they did for other video games, hopefully. Like I think this could be positive improvements for the consumer overall. Is it going to magically change your experience as a free-to-play player? No. But these games are not free-to-play, right? Like, they are free-to-play. They are free to try, but like, there's a reason, like, they do have to make money. Genshin costs money to make. Like, this is not free, right? Like, this cost money for Mihoyo to make, and they need to make some amount of money. But I have always been of the opinion that I wish they were less predatory. Like, do they need to be as predatory as they are with their monetization structure? This could be a change in the positive direction. Potentially only for US customers because they only have to comply in the United States, but maybe it will also be a change for people outside of the United States, and we'll see what happens, because it's very possible that other countries will follow suit with what the United States did, and it would have a similar filing. So maybe Canada would copy the United States, and then they have to comply in Canada as well. Yada yada. You get the point. I think this could only be a positive change overall, is fundamentally what it is. I don't think this negatively affects the players in any meaningful way. I don't know what exact discourse people are going to have about the nuances of it. Yes, it is potentially a nothing change in some ways. Yes, there's nuance to, like, maybe the United States is specifically targeting Genshin because it is a game made in China. I understand the skepticism and the healthy conspiratorial thinking that goes into questioning your government's actions. But the actual result of what this is, I think, is positive. And my hope is that the FTC will follow suit with the things they said they would do in, like, holding companies accountable, and they will hold other, like, because there's definitely predatory structures. Say like CS:GO, like Valve is a pretty beloved company in the gaming industry. I have very high impressions of Valve, but they have also, like, definitely benefited, just like Hoyoverse is benefiting off of gambling systems. Valve has made a lot of money off of gambling systems, both directly and indirectly in their game with CS:GO. I think they need to be held accountable for that. So I hope this is a good precedent for the whole industry, and I hope Genshin Impact becomes a better game for at least some people because of it, and I hope other gacha games become a better game for this. I think this is a good thing, right? This is a little bit different than that thing we saw where, like, China, the government from China, I think, had a proposal from a government official to implement some things like we are seeing that I talked about here in this FTC order. But the difference is this is a settlement with an actual order. From what I recall, the China thing was just a proposal that quickly got shut down. So I think this is a different circumstance, and I am more optimistic about this. And I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. This was not the video I planned to have come out today, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Don't screw this up, Hoyoverse. Please don't maliciously comply by making the pricing be awful. You can bet your arse I will make a video complaining and criticizing Hoyoverse if they price things really egregiously. Do it right. Do good by your community. They themselves said, they value the trust of our community and share a commitment to transparency. Prove it. Prove it with your actions, please.